Well, I won't defend that behavior at all. I mean, I don't think anyone would. Yeah. Right.
And I assume you're doing inkjet print.
That's correct, yeah. Yep.
I saw the Stieglitz strand exhibit at the Met. They were prints, and these were done by Stieglitz and Strand and Stieglitz. There were prints. I remember Stieglitz. The blacks were so lush, it looked like 50 layers of charcoal or something. And a very good reproduction in the book. That's gone, and you aren't going to do that with a computer.
Yeah, I agree completely, yeah. No, you won't find a bigger fan of the traditional silver print. It's beautiful. It's its own thing. But in 2011, what year is it? 2011, we can do things with digital that Stieglitz never could have dreamed of doing back then. And that's beautiful too, and it opens up other options. But I don't think it makes what we're doing now less valid because we're not in the darkroom printing on silver paper. It's a different generation. It's a different artist. It's a different way of approaching it.
The question you need to ask is with Stieglitz, what to do with it?
Well, nobody knows the answer to that. Do you know Horace Bristol, photographer Horace Bristol? He was a Life magazine, you know Horace, Life magazine photographer back in the, I think the 30s. He chronicled the migration west, the Dust Bowl, and they sent him out with a young writer named Charles Steinbeck. And the trip that they took turned into the Grapes of Wrath. And I had the opportunity to meet Horace really towards the end of his life. He was very old. He was not in good health. I was out in California at the time. And we brought him over to the studio to introduce him to digital and to show it to him. He was interested in it. He wanted to know what it was about. We were excited to show it to him. We were young kids, essentially, and here's someone that we idolize and how interesting that would be. And I'll try not to drag the story out too long, but he came over and came upstairs, had to rest for a little while once he got up there because just the journey over a couple of blocks was sort of trying for him. And we pulled up. We'd previously scanned one of his photographs and put it up on the screen and showed him Photoshop. And we said, Horace, what do you think about this image? Is there anything that about it that you would have liked to have done differently? And he said, no, I don't want to be any trouble. Don't want to bother you. He said, no, this is what we're here for. And he said, well, that mailbox over there, I never thought it looked right. And if there was a way that mailbox wasn't there, I think it would be a better photograph. And we can do that with Photoshop. And he had never seen that. And so we go and we make that adjustment, and he looks at it and he nods and he says, well, okay, what about the tent flap over there? and we start going, and we're all excited, and we think he's excited, and then we look over, and he's crying. He's 80-some odd years old, and tears literally running down his face. And we said, Horace, we're so sorry. Did we offend you? Did we upset you? And he says, no. And I get goosebumps when I tell this story still. He says, I'm just so sad that something so wonderful has come along so late in my life that I won't have the opportunity to take advantage of it, that I missed it. He got a glimpse of it at the end, and he recognized the potential. And I like that story as an answer to that question. We don't know what Stieglitz would have done. I've talked to people that worked with Ansel Adams, and they're adamant that he would have loved the computer. He would have loved the control because he was all about control. But we can't really second guess that. That's a different time.
Hi, I was curious about the security of the plate and the file. We're kind of talking a little bit about that, but after the print is made, and what happens to the security, because that has to do with originality as well.
Well, in traditional printmaking, the plate is destroyed, damaged, struck, so that it can't be reproduced.
At our studio, we archive everything that we create, and we always have the ability to go back, and if the artist wants us to. And we can purge that from our archive, and we have when we've been requested to, but in most cases it doesn't come up. But the bigger question is one of integrity, and we have to rely upon the integrity of all the people involved, and that hasn't changed digital to analog. It's always the same question. So, I've always said the quickest way I could destroy my business would be to make an unauthorized print at any time. If that became the reputation, if we did it just once, no one, and I wouldn't expect them to ever come back. So I think it answers the integrity of the printmaker and the artist.
And yet, aren't there prints in the collection of Smith that were made from struck plates, or that have a certain value now as historical reference?
Well, we have them as teaching tools because it is interesting to show people, and that's something that actually didn't start until the 19th century. Before that, we have some prints that were done from Rembrandt's original plates that were done in the early 20th century, which are just awful because they look terrible. They're on modern paper, and people have tried to, correct them and make them look better, and it's just sad. So we do have some struck plates, some impressions in the collection to just sort of talk about that whole process of, in the 19th century, people started to limit their editions, and they started to sign them, and just sort of the relationship between multiples and values started to change quite a bit. So Jonathan, I'm interested though, have you had anyone you work with, like what happens when an artist passes away and you have a digital file?
Well, the honest answer is that the file is archived on tape, and it resides in the archive, but we never unarchive it. We never pull it back off the tape. And it's a good question. And one, this is still an evolving sort of conversation with the technology, and we're figuring it out as we go. I guess I would like to say any time that happens, we immediately go and purge that and it disappears forever, and we could do that, but the reality is we don't take the time to do it. It just sort of gets deeper and deeper into the archive. But in order to pull it off the archive, it's an event. We have to take very specific steps to get it off. It's not sitting on the desktop ready to print at any moment.
Yes, thank you. I'm just curious, in traditional printmaking, what were the factors that the artist as businessman considered before running off, say, 15 prints or 30 prints or 100 prints or 3,000 prints before destroying the original?
I think it was probably a market decision. So it would be, sometimes if you only print 15, it could be a rarity thing, or it could also be the type of print that you're doing. Say a dry point, you can really only get a certain number of really good prints from a single plate, whereas lithographs you could get thousands. So I think a lot of it was based on what the market would bear, what they thought they were going to set the price for. But I'm sure it changed for every single artist in every single generation. I think what I'm talking about now is very much a 19th century to the present day way of thinking about it. And I think probably for Rembrandt, he probably made a print and then sold it, and then went and made another print and sold it, because he didn't have to worry about maintaining the integrity of the edition. Because a lot of collectors really focus on the edition number. They'll say, oh, there's only 20 of these, and I want number 5. Like some people only collect like number 5 of the edition. So it's a bit of a market. I don't want to say ploy, but it's a market thing.
I remember when I first discovered printmaking, and the discussion of editioning was discussed, and encountering one of my early influences in the world of printmaking, Leonard Baskin, and being shocked by the fact that he didn't he didn't sign a number his prints. And that I was very impressed by that. I think he definitely hearkened back to an early day of printmaking in his aesthetic, and wanted to continue with that.
But I think even within Baskin's work that changed. I think when he started working with other printers, then he definitely started doing editions. Yeah.
I think, Liz, you mentioned that now a lot of artists, printmakers, are just producing one version of their print, not editioning. And I wonder do you think that that's, in our world where things are so reproducible now, Is there a sense among artists that having just one version makes it more original than producing multiples?
I don't know if that's why. I think the reason that a lot of the artists I work with are doing monotypes and monoprints is because they're more interested in perhaps the serial nature of how an image evolves, in that the marketability is not a question that even enters their mind. It's more about image making and unique image making.
I think certainly for myself, I've done editions and I've even printed editions. Printing editions isn't a lot of fun for a lot of printmakers, and that might be a factor.
Yeah, exactly. And yet there are, I myself edition my own work, small editions, 10, 15, and there are, many printmakers that I work with who do editions, but they keep them small. They do editions because they plan to sell them, and they want to sell multiple original works. And there's something, wonderfully, there's something great about the process of editioning a print. It's a meditative, physical process that you kind of move into, and it's lovely. But I don't think the printmakers I work with are looking for a perfect mechanical reproduction of each image. A little variation is okay. I think there's a loosening up of that.